Good day and welcome to Technology Enhanced Learning, the show that features current research on technology and education. I am your host, Judith Rodrigo from the Ateneo de Manila University in the Philippines. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking to Dr. Lung-Hsiang Wong, a senior research scientist and the co-program director of the Learning Sciences and Innovation Research Program at the Center for Research in Pedagogy and Practice, Office of Education Research, National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University. She received his PhD from NTU, major in computer engineering with a focus on artificial intelligence in education. His current research interests are in the areas of mobile and seamless learning, computer-assisted language learning and science learning, computer-supported collaborative learning, and teachers' professional development. Drawing upon his vast experience in conducting design-based research and school-based longitudinal intervention studies, he developed his niches in both seamless learning and computer-assisted language learning. In particular, he has become a key researcher on mobile seamless learning by leading the synthesis efforts. He developed 10 dimensions of mobile seamless learning, one of the most influential and well-referenced frameworks in the field. In the Innovating Pedagogy 2012 report curated by the Open University UK and the chapter on mobile learning in Handbook of Learning Sciences, 10D MSL was cited as an important resource for mobile seamless learning researchers and practitioners. Recently, he published 2 books on mobile seamless learning, namely Seamless Learning in the Age of Mobile Connectivity and Move Language Learning, Investigating Seamless and Mobile-Assisted Language Learning. He has published extensively and has won several Best or Outstanding Paper Awards in international conferences. He won the prestigious APSI Distinguished Researcher Award in 2015. He is currently a managing editor of the SSCI Indexed Asia Pacific Journal on Education and a former associate editor of IEEE Transactions on Learning Technology. Welcome, Lung-Hsiang, and thank you for joining us today. You've been in the field of technology and education for a very long time. You're one of the founding fathers of the field, especially in Singapore. Today, we want to focus on one of your core interests, which is seamless learning. And I wanted to start off by asking you, where are the seams? Where are the seams? Why do we want to remove them?
So we are talking about learning. It's not just about learning at school. So with all these opportunities to learn everywhere, we can learn in our daily life out of school. And even before, for youngsters and before they enter schools and after they leave schools, they always have a chance to learn out of school. And then they always have a chance to learn maybe online in the cyberspace. So each different space, learning space, offer different types of learning opportunities. Some of them are quite unique. Let's say you can apply whatever you have learned in your classroom, in your daily life. Yeah, something is not that authentic if you do it in a classroom simulated setting. Yeah. So when you go to cyberspace, you can do a lot of internet search, abundant of information for you, which is something that you cannot do it in your daily life or in the classroom. So, but all these type of learning opportunities are fragmented, isolated. So how about actually we bring them together? We bridge all these different learning efforts, different types of learning activities and different learning spaces. So we used to have seams. We call it seams between formal learning and informal learning. Yeah. Or we used to have seams between, let's say, individual learning and social or collaborative learning. We used to have seams between learning in physical space and learning in digital space. So if we remove or at least blur the seams, we bridge them so that we can achieve the kind of learning trajectory, maybe learn in classroom, maybe apply or observe phenomenon in your daily life. Maybe you do collective reflection online, and then you look back. So we have this kind of a very holistic kind of learning trajectory throughout our life.
Thank you. You've mentioned several different sort of dichotomies here, individual versus collective and so on. There's a lot of terminology that we hear, different forms of referring to different forms of learning. Could you tell us how seamless learning differs from things like flipped classroom, lifelong learning, blended learning, all these terms that we hear when we, with our colleagues, or when we read the literature, or when we attend conferences.
So usually when people start thinking, hearing about seamless learning, their first reaction is that, are you talking about blended learning instead? So I think we do a comparison of blended learning. That's probably easier for everybody else to understand. Blended learning, in a sense, is that it's actually a formal learning approach. So all the way, teacher or instructor design. They design the entire learning process, including learning in a classroom, face-to-face, synchronous learning, and then online learning portion may be asynchronous or sometimes synchronous, but online. But everything is all prescribed by teachers. So seamless learning is different. Seamless learning, actually, we try to blur another scene between self-directed learning and teacher-directed learning. So which means that it doesn't mean that have to be all the way designed by the teacher, and then students just follow whatever teacher tell you to do, even at home, even online, at your own time, own pace, you still follow whatever teacher tell you to do. You can be more self-directed. Let's say you're getting curious and you observe something in your daily life, you feel something curious. It's not directly related to whatever teacher is teaching now, but then you can always raise it. You can always do your personal inquiry, share it with your classmates, and you discuss further and see whether there's any link to whatever teacher is teaching. So which means that we're actually kind of, we think that self-directed learning and teacher-directed learning are both important. This is not just for blended learning, it's all the way teacher design.
That's interesting, because in order for you to encourage a student to pursue their own curiosity, pursue their own interests or their questions, we have to create that kind of environment that provides that encouragement, right? So how do we, as educators, sort of, when you use the word seamlessize in your work, how do we do that as educators?
So we can take, let's say, inquiry learning as an example. Yeah, people familiar with inquiry learning. Let's say I think in traditional way of applying inquiry learning is in classroom based. Everything classroom based. You get teacher maybe facilitate the students to form hypotheses through maybe teacher-student discourse, or maybe through student small group discussions. And then they test hypotheses together, and then maybe they try to reformulate hypotheses, and also whatever you're doing everything within classroom. Yeah, so that's traditional sense of inquiry learning. But then how about with synthesized inquiry learning? We think along the line. Can we form the hypothesis in your daily life? Students maybe after school, they observe whatever, they say, okay, you look at this, you find something that maybe you can help you to form a hypothesis. You take a photo, you share it on an online space with a classmate. They say, okay, from this, I guess I'll try to explain it this way. This is a hypothesis. And then you can test hypothesis together. You discuss hypothesis. You maybe you kind of construct knowledge together online, and then you bring back to classroom for consolidation. So it means that you always think along the line that whether you are able to blend this kind of activities beyond classroom, blend into your daily life, and then you bring together. You put whatever you observe personally to the social space for further knowledge building. So this is the way we try to synthesize those are learning approaches which are traditionally more classroom-based.
Do you have a favorite? I mean, you gave a relatively sort of general example of how we can seamlessize an approach. Do you have a favorite lesson plan or a module that you've seen implemented in the work that you do?
Yeah. Okay, now I can take an example for about this a lesson plan designed by Singapore teachers for primary 3 students in science class, or third graders in science class. The topic is about plants and their parts. Yeah, so the plants that comprises leaf, stem, and roots. They're supposed to learn the functionality of each of these parts, and then how, when they're brought together, it becomes a system and they functions differently. They learn about water transportation from the root to the stem and finally to the leaves, and then they learn about photosynthesis. That's the other way around, from leaf and then to stem and then to roots. So what happened is that there are certain, the lesson plan start with classroom activities, a series of classroom activities. And one of them is that the students are supposed to use their camera phone to record an activity where they actually dismantle a pen. Yeah. And for pen, because we look at the pen, we know that there are actually different parts, and then each of them have their own functionalities and brought together in a system, and then they function differently because you can use it to write something, and then there are also ink inside. So becomes an analogy of water transportation. And afterwards, they have to share this their discussion, share their understanding in the classroom, and from there they actually bring us an analogy to bring better understanding about the plants and all these parts. And afterwards, after school, they are being tasked by the teachers to take photos with their camera phone in their neighborhood of different types of trees, different types of plants. They take the roots photo, and then they take photos of stems, and then they take photos of leaves. They share it in a social space, maybe a social media space. So they put all the roots, different types of roots together on the same page. They put different types of stems on the same page and also different types of leaves on the same page. And then they discuss why they look different. Maybe they function differently. Yeah. So they may need to do internet search to kind of to find evidences. Yeah. To find to explain why they think that way. And they from there they can do knowledge construction. And afterwards, the students are being asked to use their smartphone to create animations to kind of to show simple animations to visualize to do. We call it as this make thinking visible, because they're supposed to demonstrate their understanding on how water transportation takes place. Yeah, using animation, simple animation, and then they also create this concept map. Yeah, to consolidate their learning using their smartphone, and eventually the teachers share some of the student work and discuss if this is a good work or if this is something that contains some misconception, and let's discuss how we're going to improve from there. So this is essentially how a seamless learning lesson plan may take place, but this is not the only way of designing seamless learning.
But it's an interesting example, and it shows like what you were trying to explain about how what happens in the classroom flows to day-to-day life, and then what comes from day-to-day life flows back into the classroom and enriches the discussion.
Yes.
It sounds a lot like seamless learning is not something that is necessarily technology heavy. It sounds like something that can be applied even in schools that don't have as many resources. But could you say more about that?
Let's say most of the places, they do not have this luxury for one-to-one setting. But I still believe that what social media can do, we instead of using one-to-one, we go for social media. So at least, even though you cannot have every student to assume ownership of their own these mobile devices, they can always create a social media space. So let's say at the school can during this class, maybe the teacher just loan out the set of mobile devices available, or maybe even just use a computer. Desktop computer also fine. Get the student to use it during this classroom, and then they create some simple social media to encapsulate their understanding or student artifacts, all these things, and leave it there. Maybe when they reach home, they after school they return home, then they can always borrow mobile devices or maybe desktop computers from their parents, from their siblings or wherever, and carry on their social media activities. Maybe they improve their artifact, or maybe they read and reply their student their classmates postings, and they go out there everywhere. Maybe they go to the library, public library. Maybe there are also free computers available. They always use that. It means that instead of using the mobile device, the student phone as we call it a learning hub of individual students, we can use social media as a learning hub instead. So this is the way that we try to work around the limitations.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lung-Hsiang. I'm very interested in that concept that you said about this social media as the learning hub. As you know, I come from the Philippines, and we are the social media capital of the world. So maybe there's a better way to use social media than just for watching TikTok videos and so on. Well, once again, thank you so much for your time. It was very kind of you to come and join us on the series. I'm sure that your episode will be very enlightening for our APSI members and anyone else who wants to listen. Thank you for your time once again, Lung-Hsiang, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.